Am I the a-hole for choosing my grandkids over my son? Throwaway account because my family knows my main, and honestly, I never thought I would be posting here again. I, 56F, have come across a whole new level of absolute chaos in my life, and my wife, 56F, thinks that coming to Reddit will either help me get another perspective on this mess, or at least give me some validation. I am just so exhausted, emotional, and mentally drained that I do not even know what to think anymore. To give you a little backstory so you understand where my head is at, I have 4 adult children that I birthed and raised with my ex-husband. My sons, 35M, 29M, and my daughters, 32F, 29F. A few months ago, all 4 of them collectively decided to cut me out of their lives entirely.
Why?
Because I flat out refused to step in and become the primary caregiver for their father. My ex-husband and I divorced over 10 years ago. It was an incredibly messy, toxic, and emotionally draining divorce, and we did not part ways on good terms. Yet, when his health began to decline, my children somehow convinced themselves that it was my moral obligation to step up and take care of him as a favor to them. I refused. I stuck by my decision. Instead of spending my hard-earned retirement years wiping my abusive ex's brow and playing nurse to a man who treated me like garbage, my wife and I packed our bags and went on a long-overdue cruise. My children were furious. They haven't spoken to me directly since that day. They blocked my number, blocked me on social media, and made it explicitly clear that unless I was willing to take care of their father nearly every single day, I was dead to them. Right now, the only way I would be able to see my children or my sweet grandchildren would be if I physically showed up at their front doors and forced my way inside. But I refuse to be that kind of person. I will be the first to admit that it hasn't been easy. The silence in my house has been deafening. I miss my kids terribly. I cry about it in the middle of the night when I think my wife is sleeping. But my wife, my therapist, and I all agree on one thing. If I give in now, I am just teaching my adult children that they can hold their love hostage until I cave to their unreasonable demands. And then, out of nowhere, a crack appeared in the wall. Recently, my eldest son's wife, Kate, 34F, reached out to me directly. She texted me saying that she had a total emergency and asked if I would be willing to watch my grandchildren, Emma, 9F, and Kyle, 6M. When I saw her name pop up on my phone, my heart practically stopped. I missed those kids so much it felt like an actual physical ache in my chest. I obviously agreed immediately. At the time, I was under the impression that my son was fully aware she was contacting me. Since I was still completely blocked on his end, I didn't even think to reach out and double-check with him directly. I was just so desperate and grateful to see my grandbabies. Kate arrived at my house a little while later, looking noticeably disheveled, stressed, and visibly pale. She practically rushed Emma and Kyle inside, gave me a hurried hug, and promised she would be back soon. Having my grandkids in my home again felt like a breath of fresh air after months of suffocating grief. We baked cookies, they drew pictures for me, and for a few hours, the crushing weight of the family estrangement completely lifted from my shoulders. Kate came back a few hours later to pick them up, but before she left, she pulled me aside and asked if I would be willing to watch the kids again later in the week. Standing on my porch, looking at her anxious face, I finally asked the question I should have asked earlier. Kate, how does my son feel about you bringing the kids here? Is he okay with this? Kate looked away for a split second, smoothed her shirt, and told me that while he was still angry with me, he was totally fine with the arrangement. She told me not to worry about it, and said to just contact her directly if there were any problems. Unfortunately, Kate was lying to me. I found this out the hard way a few days later, when my eldest son showed up at my front door, absolutely furious. His face was bright red, his fists were clenched, and he was screaming at me from the porch before I could even fully open the door. He accused me of undermining him, of meddling in his marriage, and of using his children to get back at him. That was when the real truth came spilling out, and it completely sickened me. Apparently, Kate and my son have been having severe marital problems. She started looking for divorce lawyers after my son essentially tried to strip away every bit of her independence. He had demanded that she quit her part-time job, stop going to her online college classes, and become a full-time stay-at-home mother, while simultaneously pushing her to start trying for baby number 3. Kate refused to give up her life and her future, so my son escalated. Kate revealed to me later, and my son accidentally confirmed during his screaming match, that he had been actively sabotaging her. In order to trap her at home and force her compliance, my son deliberately stopped making payments for the kids' daycare. He knew exactly what he was doing. Kate's nearest relatives live over an hour away, making daily childcare impossible for them. Any local friends she trusted to look after Emma and Kyle were also close friends with my son, and they all flatly refused to get involved in the marital crossfire. My son thought he had successfully cornered his wife. He thought that by cutting off childcare, she would have no choice but to drop out of school, quit her job, and stay home to perform her traditional duties. He never anticipated that Kate would bypass his blockade by reaching out to the one person he had disowned, me. Hearing all of this made my stomach churn. I am so deeply sad to say that the things Kate described track completely with my son's character. Tragically, he is displaying the exact same controlling, manipulative behaviors as his father. Watching my son morph into the very man who made my life a living hell for decades is a specific kind of heartbreak I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Now, look, I was not happy at being lied to by Kate. I don't like being used as a pawn in anyone's game, and it felt dirty to be caught in the middle. But when I sat down and really thought about it, I couldn't bring myself to stay angry with her.
Why?
Because as a direct result of her lie, I got to hold my grandchildren again. I got to make sure they were safe, happy, and fed. I admit that it is very selfish of me. I know my motivations aren't entirely pure. A massive part of me just desperately wants to be a grandmother to those sweet kids. So, after a long conversation with my wife, I made a deal with Kate. I agreed to keep taking the kids whenever she needs help, so she can finish her classes and keep her job. My conditions were simple. She cannot lie to me ever again, and she has to fully understand that if my son shows up at my house to pick up his children, I cannot and will not physically keep them from him. I am not going to get arrested for kidnapping, nor will I put the kids through the trauma of watching their grandmother and father physically fight over them on a front lawn. To take it a step further, I also agreed to cover the full cost of the local summer daycare program for Emma and Kyle out of my own pocket. I wanted to give Kate a breather, and I wanted my grandkids to have a fun, normal summer away from the toxic tension brewing in their home. Predictably, my son is out of his mind angry with me. Once he realized he couldn't control Kate and couldn't stop me, he sprinted straight back to his siblings. My other 3 children have finally unblocked my phone number, but only long enough to send me absolute filth. My inbox has been flooded with paragraph after paragraph calling me a traitor, a disgusting excuse for a mother, and a homewrecker. They are claiming that I am intentionally destroying my son's marriage out of spite because they wouldn't talk to me after the situation with their dad. It hurts. God, it hurts so bad. Every text message feels like a physical stab in the chest. I spend half my mornings staring at my phone, fighting the urge to sob. Just to address a point that a lot of people might bring up. When I first found out that Kate was initially lying about my son knowing, I didn't just take her word as the absolute gospel truth. I am not stupid. I sat my son down during his blow-up and directly confronted him about what Kate said. He either outright admitted to the financial sabotage or stood there in stony silence, completely refusing to deny the accusations. On top of that, Kate showed me the actual paper trail. She handed me her phone and let me scroll through the text messages and screenshots. The proof was right there in black and white. My son is tragically following in his father's exact footsteps, using isolation and financial control to force a woman into submission. And for those wondering about my ex-husband's situation, yes, he does have a current wife. From what my children told me back when we were still speaking, his new wife wasn't doing a very good job of taking care of him, which is why they tried to dump his care onto me in the first place. I haven't spoken to his wife directly because I don't feel the need to, and frankly, I think getting involved in their dynamic would be crossing a line and being entirely too nosy. So here I am. My entire family hates me. My adult children think I am the villain of the story. I am spending my savings to pay for daycare and stepping right into the middle of a war zone just to keep my daughter-in-law from being trapped and to ensure my grandkids feel loved. My wife firmly believes that providing a safe, stable, and fun environment for the grandkids comes before anything else, including my adult children's fragile, abusive egos. She insists I am doing the right thing. But sitting here in the quiet of my living room, reading the nasty messages from the children I gave birth to, I am just so torn. Am I the a-hole? Update. Happy holidays. I made this post a while ago, and because I still get update requests, I decided to post an update. To get to the main points, over the summer I paid for my son's children to attend a summer camp during the day. My hope was that it would give Kate some breathing room while she handled everything related to the divorce. There were meetings with lawyers, paperwork, looking for a place to live, interviews, and all of the other things that suddenly become urgent when a marriage falls apart. The kids were excited about camp from the moment they found out they were going. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it had sports, crafts, swimming, outdoor games, and field trips. They came home talking about new friends and what they wanted to do the next day. It felt good seeing them smile after everything they had been living through. Unfortunately, it didn't last. My son went to the camp himself and informed the staff that he did not consent to the children attending. Since he is their father, the camp had little choice but to remove them from the program until the issue could be sorted out. By then, their places had already been given to other children on the waiting list, so there wasn't even an opportunity to fix it afterward. The hardest part wasn't losing the money. It was watching my grandchildren realize they weren't going back. They had already settled in and were looking forward to the rest of the summer. They couldn't understand why they suddenly weren't allowed to go anymore. Kate tried to soften the disappointment as much as she could, but there was only so much she could do. From everything I saw, my son's focus wasn't on what the children wanted or needed. His priorities seemed to be making sure Kate couldn't rely on childcare while she worked through the divorce. If that meant disappointing the kids, he didn't appear to care very much. Things became even more complicated after that. My son threatened to call the police if the children were brought to my house again. He insisted I had no business helping Kate and made it very clear that he viewed my involvement as taking her side. I wasn't interested in fighting with him or creating a scene in front of the children, so I respected the legal reality of the situation. I had already told Kate from the beginning that if my son showed up to collect the kids, I wouldn't try to prevent him. I wasn't about to create a custody dispute in my own living room. Kate eventually decided the best response was to leave the children with my son and let him arrange childcare himself. She had been doing nearly all of that work already, and once he blocked every reasonable solution she had found, it became his responsibility to come up with another plan. She also made sure the children understood why camp had ended. She didn't tell them anything inappropriate about the divorce, but she also wasn't willing to let them believe she had canceled it herself. She explained, in an age-appropriate way, that their father had decided they couldn't continue attending. As painful as that conversation must have been, she felt it was better than letting them think she had broken a promise. When the lawyers became involved, my son attempted to argue that Kate had abandoned the children. That argument fell apart fairly quickly. Kate had saved messages, emails, and other documentation showing exactly what had happened. She was able to demonstrate that she had arranged childcare, that my son had intentionally interfered with those arrangements, and that he had offered no practical alternative himself. There wasn't much room to argue that she had simply walked away when there was a clear record of her repeatedly making responsible plans that were being blocked. One positive outcome was that Kate eventually got my son to agree, in writing, that the children would be allowed to participate in summer activities going forward. That made a tremendous difference. My wife happened to know someone connected to another local summer program. Thanks to those connections, my grandchildren were able to get into that program for the final month before school started. They missed part of the summer, but at least they weren't forced to spend the rest of it sitting around while the adults argued. They made new friends, enjoyed the activities, and came home excited every afternoon. Seeing them laugh again felt like a small victory after months of unnecessary conflict. Outside of all of that, Kate has been doing surprisingly well. She found her own place, which seems to suit the three of them nicely, and she also accepted a new job that pays significantly better than her previous one. Between the higher income and no longer having someone actively making life harder for her inside the home, she seems much less overwhelmed than she did several months ago. There are still challenges, of course, but she's building a stable life for herself and the children one step at a time. One thing I'm especially grateful for is that she has continued allowing me to have a relationship with my grandchildren. I don't get to see them whenever I want, but we FaceTime regularly, and every so often I get to spend time with them in person. They tell me about school, their friends, and whatever new hobby they're interested in that week. Those conversations mean more to me than I can properly explain. After believing I might never see them again, even a short video call feels like a gift. As for my own children, they eventually unblocked me, but not because they wanted to repair our relationship. Almost every interaction quickly turned into another lecture about how I had betrayed the family. They accused me of choosing Kate over my own son, even though my focus has always been on making sure my grandchildren were safe and cared for. The conversations never went anywhere productive. They simply wanted me to admit I had been wrong and apologize for helping. Eventually, the harassment spread beyond phone calls and messages. They began contacting both my workplace and my wife's workplace, creating unnecessary problems for both of us. Thankfully, nothing serious came from it professionally, but it was stressful enough that we decided we couldn't continue ignoring the behavior. After speaking with an attorney, we had an official legal notice sent demanding that the harassment stop. Fortunately, that seems to have accomplished what countless conversations never could. Things have been much quieter since then. This entire situation has been emotionally exhausting. Losing contact with your own children is painful enough. Having them continue to attack you whenever they do reach out somehow makes it even worse. There are still days when I wish things had turned out differently, but wishing doesn't change reality. Through all of this, my wife has been incredible. She has never pressured me to cut anyone off, never told me what decision I should make, and never acted like helping my grandchildren was some burden she had to tolerate. She has simply supported me through every setback. My stepchildren have also been wonderful. They regularly check in on us, invite us over for dinner, and make sure neither of us feels isolated. Their kindness has reminded me that family isn't measured only by biology. Sometimes it's measured by who consistently shows up when life gets difficult. The divorce is still moving through the legal system, so there are some details I won't discuss publicly until everything is finalized. For now, things appear to be moving in a positive direction for Kate and the children, and that's about all I feel comfortable saying. It's not perfect, but I'm happier now than I was while married to my ex-husband. Also, I heard through Kate that while the worst part of my ex's health issues are over, he's been left permanently in a less than ideal condition. Apparently another issue also came to light during all of this. He had secretly spent thousands of dollars on accounts without his current wife knowing, which ended up becoming one of the biggest sources of conflict in their marriage. From what I was told, it wasn't just the money itself. It was the secrecy, the amount involved, and everything that came with it. I also learned that one of my daughters had contacted adult social services to file a complaint regarding my ex's wife because she believed she wasn't caring for him properly. An investigation was opened, but it ultimately found no wrongdoing on her part. According to what I was told, the investigators concluded that the biggest obstacle to my ex's recovery was my ex himself. He simply refused to consistently participate in the work and rehabilitation necessary to improve his condition, and there wasn't much anyone else could do if he wasn't willing to cooperate. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update.